So I just wanted to share a quick testimonial of a client who started working with us recently. It's a super exciting story and not an unfamiliar one because we've had clients like this in the past, but maybe something worth sharing. And so this client came to us after a year of struggling with neck pain, neck problems, hip pain and problems, and knee pain, meniscal tear, neuromas in her foot, and dislocated patella and calf strain. So just like a host of injuries. You might just assume, oh, well, if they're a triathlete, which she is, she's just doing too much training volume and that's why she got injured. But I kind of beg to differ. Like, I think there's a lot of elite athletes that train a lot more than this particular one did, and they never get injured. So we always try to look at it from a different perspective of not necessarily training too much, but perhaps being able to change the philosophy of how they're moving, or changing the program enough to create a good change. So she came to us a few weeks ago, or a little bit earlier than that, and even though we're in a shutdown, we started training online. So we did an online movement assessment, which we call our remote movement assessments, and then we started training on Zoom. We did 2 sessions in a week and a half because she is scheduled for an MCL repair surgery. And so she wanted to fit in a few sessions before she was like out for a month. So we did 2 Zoom sessions. On the 3rd session, I asked her, how things are going. And she said, my neck pain is almost gone. She said, it hasn't been this good in over a year. And we did nothing specific for the neck. We did a couple releases in the initial parts of the program that were specific to her, but we didn't do any exercises for it. And then, she said, my hip has been feeling pretty good. My hamstring tension is releasing because it was a chronic kind of pull on the outside of her hamstring. And this was after, 2 sessions. And the initial 2 sessions for us are usually very basic. They're nothing crazy. There's definitely no squatting or heavy lifting. And it was pretty cool to see that she was already seeing gains. I sometimes get asked, like, how do you know where to start, or how do you know that those exercises that you're choosing are going to make them better? And I guess part of the answer is that I don't always know. It's always a black box. It's always me inputting the exercises into the human and then them spitting out an output of movement or perceived exertion, or a change in gait or how they're feeling, and then we kind of change the input based on our output or our feedback, and we continue this loop of like trial and error all the time. But part of the process that we use is doing these specific movement assessments, because for example, some technology has like really advanced the field of sports science, like force plate testing, and strength testing, and lactate threshold testing, and VO2 max testing. Like, there's so much testing now, and we see it happen where a company will adopt force plate testing, for example, to help with injuries or help predict them. But our stance is that we don't have money to buy force plates. We don't have money to buy some of this expensive technology. So we rely on field testing, and we rely on our eyes a little bit more, or video feedback a little bit more. And it doesn't mean we can't test. It just means that we have to choose field tests. But back to my point, sometimes people rely too much on the technology, and they will rely on the numbers they see, let's say on a force curve from someone jumping on their force plates, and they'll pick out, there's an asymmetry in this limb versus this limb, and there's, weird takeoff and all these things. But we don't have that. We just have qualitative type video feedback. And from our experience, it's typically been enough to prevent a lot of injuries, to solve a lot of injuries, and to make a plan based on where they're weak and where they're tight and where they need movement training or where they need more length. because our programs are definitely not, typical powerlifters programs or typical strength programs where you always have a pull-up on day 1 and a bench press on day 2 and a squat on day 3. We are extremely tailored and extremely individualized, and we might do squats and bench presses and pull-ups still, but it all comes back to the black box, inputting something, seeing what the output is, and constantly reevaluating. And so I would urge you to maybe reconsider, if you're thinking of buying a bunch of technology in order to be a better coach, maybe try to coach first with the resources that you have. They are inexpensive, they work really well, and if you're attentive enough, you can develop the old school coaching eye, whereby, you don't need necessarily video feedback, you don't necessarily need force plates, you don't necessarily need HRV monitoring to make you a good coach. You become a good coach because you're watching, listening, and hearing your athlete. And I think we all need more of that.